Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and today I'm absolutely delighted to have as my guest and also a very close and lovely friend, Angela Fischetti. Angela is a senior fitness consultant certified by an affiliate of the American Council on Exercise. She was a trained yoga teacher and has been for over 2 decades. She's a licensed massage therapist and the creator of Boomer and Beyond Wellness, which is an amazing place and thing that sets up fitness for, I'll say, people of a certain age, because I'm of a certain age. And so I like that terminology. So welcome, Angela. It's such a pleasure to see you. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world, championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
Oh, Doc, this is such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much. And if people hear me refer to you as Doc, well, please take it and understand that it is coming from a place of love and respect.
Yes, and I know that, and I think they'll figure that out because of our connection. You know, as people get to know you, and we're going to get into your passion and what you're doing now, but I think, you know, reading about you, your story is such an inspirational journey that got you to where you are through a lot of hardship and a lot of, you know, changes that people go through in their lives. But, you know, you encapsulated it so well in how you speak about it. And I know that your life kind of starts early on that yellow brick road with Judy Garland, which I really loved. I love that little thing you wrote about, because I know you had an early history in the performing arts as a singer and as a stage performer, or doing plays and Shakespearean plays at that. So talk a little bit about the early stages of your life that kind of moved you toward being the plant exclusive person that you are, and in taking the reins of the kinds of things that are now big passions in your life. Talk about that early progress and development that kind of moved you in that direction.
Well, I think there were several things that contributed to it. I was the youngest. My brother is 5 years older, and he is an elite athlete. He played baseball eventually for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Wow.
And so growing up, having an older brother like that, well, back in those days, I was referred to as a tomboy. And I think it's one of the healthiest and most wonderful ways for a young girl to grow up, because you learn how to be outside, being very active. And I mean active, Doc. I mean, my brother, I would get his like hand-me-downs of his football gear. I wore a football helmet and the shoulder pads and the knee pads. I was 7 years old playing with 12-year-old boys, and my brother would just tell me, get low and hit him in the belly. And I would just be like, boom. And
That's
I
cool.
just, you know, when I swung the swings that came from the trees, and we would go from rooftop to rooftop, I really didn't have much fear. So that's when instilled, I think, my love of movement and exercise and being outside. And we used to, you know, those are the days you go take your bicycle and you would travel miles, and who knew where you were, you know,
Right.
and you came home for dinner. So the physical aspect most definitely began with him, no question. Then, as later on that I developed more and more into the arts, I traveled the country in different plays and in Shakespearean productions. And I had to figure out a way to exercise while traveling. And let me tell you something, this wasn't 5-star hotels with gyms. Okay. I'm
Right.
talking in the 80s.
Right.
And, you know, it was motels. And so at the time, Jane Fonda, she released her workout. And wow, to know that there was a way I could travel, take her cassette tape on the road in a little cassette tape player. And that's how I maintain my fitness level while on the road, because you know that traveling on the road like that for entertainers, gruesome scheduling. You would have 12, 13-hour bus drives, that kind of thing. And so the only way I could do it would be in these motel rooms. But as I came to realize this is not going to be the life for me, it was really through my childhood and Jane Fonda that I found this deep passion, equal passion for fitness. And I was in gyms in my late teens and all the way till now. And it never left. That passion never left.
Well, how did you segue from, that life on the road on the boards, to the stage performer when in plays to what came next? Because I know next came things that involved everything from, as you said, fitness to yoga. How did you see yourself working that into a life plan at that point, because you had been so kind of focused in one way? So talk a little bit about that segue and what went on in that segue, because I think that is important for people when they're thinking about making changes or their life changes themselves.
I can't say that it was mapped out as a life change. I just knew I needed to change it at the moments in time. Now, the one other thing I want to put here is that what also greatly influenced me was the fact I had the most stunning relationship with my mother's parents, with my grandparents from Italy. And I was attracted to that generation as a little girl. I mean,
Mhm.
I would visit with my cousins, and it would be the cousins and those people who spoke Italian laughed out loud a lot, told these animated stories, and I was just like, I want to be with you people. I
Right.
don't care if I understand the language or not. And that's what happened. And so, with the love of fitness and exercise and movement, um, I knew it had to be with that generation. And it was an unusual gravitational pull, if you want to call it that, at that point in time. And so when I ultimately left theater and knew more and more as I got more and more immersed into my own workouts and what have you, and I had this insatiable knowledge to learn the gym, and I had a couple of the bodybuilders, the male bodybuilders, were like, "You like the metal," and they just helped me, and they just taught me all this different stuff with the machines and the weights and the squat racks. And it was a little unusual at the time, because by the time then I got my first certification in as a personal trainer and group fitness instructor, it was 1990.
Right.
And it was interesting that the male bodybuilders were so helpful, because there were other male bodybuilders in Brooklyn who wanted to have my throat. They were like angry that they had to
Well,
wait.
it wasn't a female arena back then. Let's be realistic. That was like
Right.
a male dominated, macho, testosterone kind of driven head. And here you come in, and you've got your own skills and things that you bring to the table. So I could see where there could be a little backlash and a little bit of tension.
Oh yeah, it was more than a little bit of tension. These guys, it was also the days of the juice. They were
Right.
pumping, they were shooting. These guys were enormous. Like, their biceps were the size of my thigh. And they would stand, I'm not kidding you, Doc, like this
Right.
over me, looking down at me. And I'd be on the bench press, and they would be like, I'll be GD'd if I got to lose the bench to a female. And they were just staring me down, waiting for me to get off the bench. And I would just look at them like, really? And I would just keep pumping, because I just thought, hey, I gotta hold my ground here if I want to get healthy and stay strong. So I hope that gives you a better understanding
Yeah,
as
it
to
gives
how
me.
that sort of pulled those aspects together. And when I was a member at the gym, also around that same year, 1990, they knew that I was studying all of this. And I used to stay at the gym for many hours watching people and watching the trainers. And I got approached by one of the managers. And she said to me, and she's the one who changed my life professionally. She said to me, we think you would be great to lead a senior fitness program here. And I just answered really cocky and said, oh, you'd be right.
That
I
was out
didn't.
of that gym in the city. You were in New York at that time, in where?
Yeah,
In Brooklyn back then?
I
Where were
was
you?
in Brooklyn, but
Yeah. Okay.
this gym was in Brooklyn Heights, and it's still there. It's
Huh.
still there, and it's 75,000 square feet. They then
Wow.
they put me through a 1-year program with the American Senior Fitness Association, and that's where I got immersed in people's different conditions, issues, illnesses, medications. And, there was no Google. There was
Right.
no Google to figure out what are the side effects. You had to look it up. I think it was in the PDR, right? You have to go
Yeah.
through the book and in that language, I was like, I don't understand what they're saying. So what I did was I developed a rapport with the best people I think you can learn from when it comes to the anatomy and the body and movement. I'm going to say it is chiropractors.
Right.
And I mean, it's the truth, doc, and you know it. And so I developed a rapport with chiropractors, so much so that I would ask them, can you get permission? Can we get permission from your patients? You let me in to let me see what you're doing with them. And I would do the same with physical therapists. So I was allowed in to observe the work. So I came at the work from the perspective of, if I'm working with this demographic, I'm going to have to know how not to hurt them, is my biggest driving factor.
Right.
So that's how
So
it.
that was a big help. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
here with Angela Fischetti from Boomer and Beyond Wellness. We're going to take a very short break to hear from our sponsor, the National Health Association, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the NHA Health Science Podcast. Dr. Frank Sabatino here, encouraging you to check out the NHA membership. For just $35 a year in the US and $55 internationally, you'll have access to a wealth of resources, including our quarterly full-color print magazine, Health Science. Stay updated on the latest health tools, inspiring stories, and exclusive events like the NHA Conference and plant-exclusive cruises. Join us at healthscience.org/membership and make a difference in your life and the world. I'm Dr. Frank Sabatino, your host, and now back to the NHA Health Science Podcast, where more exciting insights await you. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I'm here with Angela Fischetti. You're talking about that movement into fitness. Let's talk a little bit about, because at that point, I'm sure you weren't on the track of being completely focused on plant exclusive eating, which became a bigger part of your life as your life went on. So talk about how that evolved for you, and how, because we all come from some conventional way of eating.
Oh God.
I'm just curious on your little dance, where that became an important issue for you. And I know part of that has to do with animal rights, because you're a big animal lover like I am, and certainly a big cat lover like I am. And cats have been like, major players in both of our lives and on both of our paths. So talk a little bit about that if you can.
Well, I used to kid with you when we were doing the water fast that you and I came from the standard American Italian diet, because I do think that has its own challenges, especially with the dairy. But I actually became vegetarian, okay, in 1987. And it was directly after I read John Robbins' book, Diet for a New America. And there was a cat, a beautiful cat, who lived with me. Her name was Honey Bunny. I know it's geeky, nerdy, but that's what I called her. And she lived with me for 21 years. And at that point, 1987, I had her for about 7 years. And I just remember I put the book down, and it was given to me by a dear friend who did not read it, and I wish she did. But I came out of my room and I took one look at Honey Bunny, and I went, oh, never again. I mean, that was it. I was like, I'm not touching meat. I'm not going anywhere near meat. And I wasn't wise yet to dairy. But
Right.
by 1990, that's when I transitioned to vegan. And interestingly enough, it was mostly at that point raw vegan, because I got introduced to the works of a man called Matthew Grace. And Matthew had a cable, an old-fashioned cable like PBS show,
Mhm.
and I used to watch him because he was a plant-based, raw vegan personal trainer, and I just was like, "Well, this is great. What is this?" And this is great. So at that point, um, I really started going in the raw direction for about 5 years, 5 years straight. I can tell you that I never knowingly ate cooked food. But with me, and I'm sure with many people, when some sort of dramatic event, or if you want to say trauma, enters the life, I went back to vegetarian. And
Right.
it was through that wicked dairy, man, that total pleasure trap food.
Well, that dairy is kind of intriguing because
Ooh.
coming from Italian backgrounds, dairy is like the ultimate comfort food for Italians, and you know that. And so from the get-go, we kind of create a lot of comfort and distraction in our lives in response to stress by using those foods, because from the moment we dealt with that in Italian households, if you could eat, certainly nothing else could be wrong in the world. And so, that's one of those, that's the little demon that can keep coming back. So I understand the dairy thing. Plus the fact that it creates a little bit of an opiate addiction, because you create these casomorphines that are opiate-like compounds in cheese and dairy that you withdraw from. So,
Mhm.
and I know you went through some very profound trauma related to the loss of close personal friends and people to you, and their own traumas and their own diseases, and that triggered a movement back to that. But then you found your way back to your yellow brick road,
That's
basically.
right.
And what was the motivation for that? What brought you back? Because I think that's an inspirational piece to the story too.
Wow. I never talked about this, but the first time out, now that you're bringing it up in this way, the first time out was through singing again. I hadn't sung, I don't know how long. And I went for a session with a woman who's a psychologist, but she does tapping. And
Right.
my first session with her, because I was not well, doc. I was not well. I was binging and purging, and I just was off the deep end, and I went to her, and she put me on this table, like a massage table. She tapped my heart chakra and my throat chakra, and she said, "There's no connection." And I immediately went, "I have to sing. I have to sing again."
Right.
So that's when I returned to singing for a while by way of chanting with kirtan, and especially with Sanskrit. I know it's like I've been asked by people. I was asked by, she was a very famous Broadway singer who I owe so much to, was Barbara Cook. And what a voice. And I used to travel a lot, and I studied with her for a while too. And I just watched her all the time. And she just said to me one day, she goes, "How does someone from Brooklyn wind up singing in Sanskrit?" I was like, I don't know. But when I hear the chants, I'm just like, I would just melt. I would melt. So before I returned passionately into exercise, it was through vocalizing and getting it out this way. But it was just about chanting to something greater than myself. So it was
Right.
really, I called it at the time songs of joy and devotion, because that's really what it was. It was the sort of coming out of some serious dark times. I mean,
Right.
black. Okay. I mean, black. And it was this light, this lifting light. So then I started to be like, oh, your body wants to go with that. And that's when yoga got presented to me.
Right.
And I started to delve into yoga. And then it was like, well, eventually there was some health issues that erupted. And whoa, You better go lift weights again. And that's really how, and one just sort of blossomed into the other. But this is the first time I'm ever really realizing the thing that opened the gate was letting it out,
Yeah, it
vocalizing.
connected you back to your heart center. I get that.
Yeah.
And music has the power to do that. You know, I'm a musician. My sons are. I
Yep.
wanted them to find music in their lives, and they found it in a big way. And it's one of those universal languages that transcends agenda. It really
Mm-hmm.
brings you into the moment, and living in that moment connects you to the magic and the mystery that
Mm.
really comes into our lives and overcomes the fear of everything, fear of death, fear of all of it. And so it opens up a lot of space. That's a very interesting piece, you know, in your life. I'm here with Angela Fischetti. Angela, where can people find you to pursue, learn more about you, learn more about what you're doing? What's the URL or the location that they can go to?
Oh, thank you, Doc, for that. I really appreciate it. Well, I would suggest that people can contact me by way of the contact form on my website, which is boomerandbeyondwellness.com. I'll repeat it again. It's boomerandbeyondwellness.com.
So that's a great segue. Let's talk about Boomer and Beyond Wellness, and let's talk about how that evolved in your life, where
Mm,
you kind of, you know, really have this passion that started, as you said early, when you looked at those nice Italian gatherings for people of a certain age, wanting to empower and get people into movement, and usually very much a forgotten population, a
that's right.
population that is put out to pasture and actually treated like they have no real value. Their core value is kind of denigrated. And you very powerfully turn people on in those age ranges, more elder people, to the power that they have within them via the process of physical movement and activity. So let's talk about how the Boomer and Beyond Wellness came to be,
Mm,
and how and what that is in terms of your passion and your purpose.
thank you for that. Well, Doc, I have you to thank for that because it was, yeah, because it was, I did the water fast with you in 2019, and it was near the end. It was like I left the water fasting at the end of October of 2019. And the health benefits were extraordinary, but that's another conversation. But um, when it became the pandemic, I lost everything except my apartment. I lost everything. And you were the one who told me you need to reinvent yourself. So, and I listened to you, Doc. I listened to you and pretty much listened to everything you say. And when you said that, I took that very deeply to heart. And I knew that I had to step into my areas of discomfort, tech, you know,
Right.
internet. I was like, you know, but little by little, um, I knew that if I wanted to continue my work is it is my passion. You are right when you use that word. It is my passion because I have witnessed this has been I am now my own demographic, right? I'm going to be 66 and this has been my demographic for over 35 years, 36 years. And what I have witnessed over the years is something that I'm just like, well, I don't want to participate in that concept of aging. And
Right.
I want to help people understand that no matter where they are at in their process of exercise, what have you, that it's all doable. Doesn't matter the circumstance. If it's if somebody's in a wheelchair, I'm going to figure out how to use the wheelchair, how to use the chair as a tool for health versus you know, sitting is the new smoking. I get it, but sometimes people can't help being in a chair all day
Right.
long. It's health related. It could be work related, right? And what I really object to, and boy, did I encounter it in my own health journey, is the condescension from, and I adore many, many medical doctors, okay? But some come at us so condescending and And well, you're like that because of age. No, you're not. You're like that because of lifestyle choices and
Right.
an accumulation of them. And if you buy into that crap, you might as well as just lay down and go to sleep, because it is a total underestimation of what we're capable of. I mean, I work with people having a Parkinsonian downer. During the downer, medical doctor talking to him, you run and continue with the work, doc, because I will go into the bed with you and I will help you do some work. And this is when people, when they're this challenged, they typically, my experience is, make the choice to do something that's a little edgy because it makes them feel some sense of control in their life. Everybody is deciding for us, oh, you can't do that. You don't do that. You'll get hurt. Okay. There are so many ways of approaching exercise. You just have to get creative. You can't think inside the box. You've got to go outside of it, and you got to look at people where they are in the moment, and you got to go, okay, what can I do in this case? Yeah, can you hold a band in your hand and can I work with that? You understand?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
sometimes that's how disengaged from the body people can be later in life. And when they discover that body part or whatever it is, I'm just going to throw out one other example only because I still remember it to this day. And it was probably 35 years ago. A woman came to me who had had a mastectomy, and she was ready to go back into lifting weights. And, before I would do anything with anybody, I'm in touch with the oncologist, the surgeon, if they're in therapy, if they're in, a rehab, I'm in touch with everybody before I do anything. And I remember going to myself, this is it. We're going to have to do this. But I didn't tell her. And then I just wanted her to have her own experience. And I put her on a bench, gave her some weights, enough weight that I knew would be effort for her. Okay.
Right.
And I gave her a pec fly. And she started doing them. And she stopped. I get a little bit like my hair's going up on and recalling this story, but she stopped and she burst out crying. And I had a feeling it was going to happen because A, I knew it was the heart chakra, and B, well, mastectomy, right?
Mhm.
And she felt her pec muscles for the first time since her surgery. So what I'm saying to you, Doc, is when people tell you, don't do it, don't bother, they are robbing people of these moments that are life-altering moments. And I'm kind of like, I'm not going to rob people of that. I want to serve that because I know what those moments are like. I've had those moments myself.
Right. Well, it's really good that people are being exposed to this information about cultures like blue zone cultures, where they
Mm,
see these people that are so incredibly physically active. And it's one of the most important issues for their longevity. Without that movement, there is no longevity, because bodies that are in motion stay in motion. Bodies at rest just get more and more inertia and they go downhill. And the
mm,
culture, unfortunately, fosters this very limited perspective of ageism. I mean, I find this very funny. Every week, I get these envelopes in the mail about, discounts on my future cremation. I mean, it's so interesting to me that they realize you're of a certain age, and now all they do is want to celebrate, your death or drive you in. It is just hilarious to me. And I've taught Tai Chi and Qigong for so many years, and I use as an example those people in their 80s and 90s doing those movements, who look and have movement better than people in their 20s and 30s. It has nothing to do with a number. Even something like osteoporosis, I know you've dealt with it, we've talked about it. It is not a disease of aging, it is a disease of disuse atrophy. So you don't use it, you lose it. And you've got to push it at every stage and age of your life. So I'm so excited that, you're transcending the literally the crap and the models
That's
that
right.
are presented in this culture about people getting older. And we need to redefine all of that. We need to redefine, age based on doing positive, constructive things that bring out the best of who we are. Because when you do that, it's amazing the dynamic potential and activity and action that you see in elder populations. People doing athletic feats that you couldn't even imagine they could possibly do. And so we have to kind of break out of that skin of limitation that's kind of imposed by the culture and the professions,
That's
because
right.
like you say, the medical profession has its own limited worldview, because in many ways, and we talk about this with docs all the time, they're brought up to believe that many diseases that are chronic, number one, can't be prevented and can't be
Mm.
reversed. So you got to just live with them, and we're going to manage them. So you get these elder people, instead of moving and being involved in these positive lifestyle modifications, what do they do all day? They spend their entire day going from one doctor to another, dealing with their infirmity, and it's just ridiculous. We need to embody that tremendous capability that we have at any age. So when you take people, I know you have a big presence on Facebook and on Instagram. You're sharing a lot of information, which is fabulous for people of all ages. So when people come to you, Angela, how do they find you, and what's the process that you kind of take us through some of the steps of how you approach a person coming to you for the first time? What are you thinking about? What are you integrating? What are you instituting in their lives? What are you recommending initially?
How I approach this all is, the first thing I do is I send people to my YouTube channel, because that really will give them a good indication of how I work. And so I have them go there, get a flavor of it. And then if they're really serious, I say, okay, these are the steps that we have to take. I need you to look at the FAQ section on my website, because that's going to explain to you what I do and how I do it and what to expect at the first session, because I am not easy to work with. And what I mean by that is, I really have a list of steps I have to take to work with people, that these steps have to be taken so that I do no harm. And if they can hang in there with this process of taking one step after the other, ultimately, my first session with somebody is, we're going to sit down and we're going to review a client health history form together. And we do this virtually, and we just go over it. But anything there that indicates to me, oh, you need to have contact with whomever their medical healthcare practitioner is. I don't care if it's an acupuncturist. I don't care. All right. I'm just going to ask permission to be able to have contact. And there are 3 questions that I ask. That's all I ask of them. The first question is, if the person is on medications, I need to know if there are any contraindicated movements regarding these medications. Because, Doc, I don't look at a person as, well, okay, they have, let's just say, osteoporosis. I'm not treating osteoporosis. I'm treating the individual with it. I want to work with the individual with it. So I don't want to go at this and go, well, there's a protocol, an existing exercise protocol for osteoporosis. That tells me nothing about the individual, though, that I
Right.
have to apply the work to. So I ask the question about the medications. Then I ask, are there any contraindicated movements for your patient or your client, whomever the practitioner is? And then the last question is, are there any movements that you suggest I do for that person? And sometimes it can take a really long time before I get my answers, because oftentimes, some, not all, and believe it or not, it's getting better. It is getting better, because more and more of the doctors are coming back with more specific answers for me. And
That's great.
I know, because for quite some time, I would hear quite often, Angela, you know more about this than I do, but I trust you. That doesn't help me. And the more information that I can cull from that person, because but also in today's day and age, Doc, which I didn't have to do before, I sometimes have to contact 5, 6, 7 specialists
Hmm.
to ask all the same questions.
Are they cool with your inquiry? Are they cool with dealing with you, or is there any kind of looking down on you for where you are? I mean, compared to
Thank you.
where they are.
There used to be, and interestingly enough, it's much less now, and they actually welcome it, and I'm very happy to see that, because I think a part of it is because we have younger doctors now, right? And they're more open and they're working out. And my own personal doctors, well, they know that I would hire them partially based on, you work out at all? Do you move? You know what I mean? Because
Right.
I've had doctors walk in the office who nothing. And and I had a doctor, she said, but she was so sweet. She was like, I do yoga.
Yeah.
I eat plants, and I just was like, yeah, you're my girl. And
Angela, I know you take a really integrated approach, and you've got experience with yoga and breathing and movement and weight training and endurance training and all of that. So when you're working with a person, do you bring that full arsenal into play? I mean,
yeah.
are you
Oh
okay?
yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about that, how you weave and integrate that a little bit.
Okay. So if somebody is coming, first of all, I want to find out from somebody, A, do you exercise? Right? And what do you like to do? And what do you just hate? Because I'm going to avoid the hate. I might figure out a way around that, and not make it obvious. But mostly I have to respect that head on, right? So depending upon what they tell me, and then what you do is, well, depending upon the situation, is it going to be somebody who's going to actually stand up? Is it going to be somebody who needs to do seated stuff? And
Right.
then, do they like to stretch? Do they not like to stretch? And depending upon the information that I gather from the practitioners, I'll find out, hey, do you like weights? No, you like bands and tubes instead? Okay. So, but there are other times when yoga movement, like let's say some of the back extension stuff, and I think spine extension is crucial in today's day and age. Okay.
Right.
And what I'll do is, instead of holding somebody in a pose, because that for some could be absolutely ridiculous, and especially if they've never done it before, I'll turn it into a fitness version. So I'll call it, well, let's do fitness Cobra. So I'll get on the, if they're able to get on the floor, I'm going to do Cobra in repetition. I'm not going to hold, but I'm going to put them through their repetitions on it, and I'm going to do it slow so that there's effort and muscle involvement, and they don't get hurt. Because a lot of times when you get somebody into a yoga pose, right away the mindset changes. They
Right.
think, I got to go the deepest, and oh, I suck at, I can't stretch. How am I going to do this? So if I get you in it and I get you out of it, and I might have a block underneath your forehead because maybe you have some neck issues or something like that, that's how I integrate the movements. Because ultimately and finally, Doc, when I work with someone, I'm looking at functional movements that reflect activities of daily living. Now, what are the movements that mostly help us achieve them? Compound movements. They are. And what is that? Multiple joints and multiple large muscles working simultaneously, because that's how the body works.
Right.
It's not, okay, here's a bicep curl and then here's a tricep kickback. You know what I mean? These are all great, and I enjoy the isolation movements too, but mostly, particularly when somebody is new, I got to get you getting up and down out of a chair without a problem. And a bicep curl is not going to help me right now, but it might help me with the push off of the chair. You understand?
Yeah.
So that's how I see someone's program, and also based on what their goals are.
Typically as people get older, as you know, one of the big deterrents to movement is pain and chronic pain.
Right.
And many times that pain is being generated by their own patterns of eating, stress in their lives, and so on. So when they come to you and you perceive that these other lifestyle pillars are contributing to their inability to follow through with you, how do you address that? Are you directing them to other professionals who you think can solve or work with those issues, or how do you approach that?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I'm thinking like, okay, what could I use for an example here? But I am not at all shy about saying to someone, that's outside of my scope of work. But this person is the person I think, based on what I've
Right.
studied, webinars and what I've read and what have you, this might be a wonderful referral. I mean, that I've referred you about a lot of
Yeah,
times, right? And
absolutely.
and it's appropriate and right to do so. Um, when somebody is that challenged, I'm going to start with, let's just do the movement. I'm not going to add anything, and that's why I tell people to go to my YouTube channel, because you're going to see me demonstrate the exercises for people with chronic issues. These
Right.
people are in pain.
Yeah.
How am I going to slap a weight in the hand on top of pain? How about I just get you to move the joint? How about I just, get the sense of, can you do this can you get up without the pain? Can you bend over to this part without the pain? That's sometimes how much you have to be willing as the instructor to break this stuff down. And you have to be willing not to get caught up in your own stuff and your own ego about, well, they got to be lifting weights and all this. No, they don't, if it's not appropriate at the moment in time. And oftentimes, Doc, I will have them put on a wrist weight with a quarter of a pound weight in it.
Yeah, that's
Let's
cool.
begin there.
That's cool. So, as busy as you are with everything that you do, give people a little idea, because I know you walk the talk, you walk your talk. Let people know a little bit about what you do on a regular basis to maintain the integrity of your body and health.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, because it is so important now. It really is. So I'll give you, for instance, today. All right. So I'm also into, I guess, other types of modalities that I enjoy and I appreciate for my health. Like I like to take an infrared sauna every day. I wake up and that's about the first thing I do is hit the sauna and get a good sweat on. And then today, what did I do? I did weights. I lifted weights for my lower body and a lot of compound movements. I threw in some isolation stuff, but primarily compound. And I also took a 1 hour weighted vest fitness walk, and that was now. It's always suggested for, like, let's say if you're going to wear a weighted vest, is to not wear anything that's above 10% of your body weight. And so I wear a 12.5 pound weighted vest, and I take and when I do the walk, I'm not sauntering. Now, I'll tell you that I got in on today's walk, I got in 9,100 steps. You know that I made up the other, to get to the 10 doing this, you know what I mean? It's just life. But as far as in fitness, and when I say in fitness, I'm talking about with an effort that makes me want to not want to speak,
Right.
but I can, right? And I'm sweating, and it's work. And when and I, as I moved here recently, and as I'm in this new complex, and people get to know you, sometimes I want to stop and chat, and I'm just like. And I don't chat when I do this stuff. I
Right.
don't want to be rude, but I gotta go.
You got to keep moving and keep going. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Where, I know everything that you're doing now. What's on a horizon for you? What would you like to do? What would you like to accomplish in your work? What is there anything else that you'd love to do besides what you're doing, in addition to what you're doing?
I think that it's a continuation of what I do, honestly, and it's both the private work, but one of the most really fulfilling uh, parts of my work now at this point, and has been for the last, I would say, two and a half years. I'm on my third year of it. That that came to a fruition because of the pandemic is my work is now I'm working as a video provider for a couple of different whole food plant exclusive plant-based platforms that help people transition from, I want to say, the standard American diet, processed foods, uh, to this our lifestyle. But these organizations, these platforms really value strength training and yoga. One of them is, I don't know, am I allowed to mention it? I don't know
You
if I'm
can
allowed
mention
to.
whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay. So one of them is Feel Fabulous Over 40, which I know you're very well acquainted with. And the other is Timmery Hagenberger. She is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and an exercise physiologist. And her platform is the Foodie Bar Way of Life. So this is an incredibly fulfilling part of my work, because the people, I don't have to talk about where do you get your protein with these people, which is really nice, you
Yeah,
know.
which is cool. Yeah.
Oh, it's so cool. But here's the thing, Doc. It is an amazing process to witness these people, because you know, when you're doing the live Zoom class and you could see them in the gallery, some people are flat on their backs in bed,
Yeah.
okay? But they got weights there, and they're lifting weights with me from
Cool.
the bed, okay? Who else has got an oxygen mask on in her wheelchair,
Right.
lifting weights? So
Yeah.
that's what is that keeps me going, Doc.
Yeah.
I see
I
this stuff
understand
and
that.
I'm like, we got to help these people, man. We got to address this stuff. This is not just about. I had a 21-year-old kid write me on YouTube, say, "Hey, Angela, I like the size of your guns. Can you tell me what your one repetition max is?" And I'm going, I don't care. I'm going to be 66, kid. I don't care about my one repetition max, but I can tell you, I care about what I eat, about the consistency of my work. I said, people in my demographic, they've had chronic issues. They don't give a crap about a 1 RM,
Yeah.
okay? But it was
Absolutely.
adorable, though. But
That's very funny.
it was adorable.
So, Angela, as we wind this down, do you have any parting words you'd like to share with the audience out here?
Yeah, don't quit. Don't quit. Just always know that there is a way you can do this. When you look at something, I always tell people, when you preview, when you watch a video, let's say it's an exercise video, don't participate. I want you to preview it first, but I want you to look at it from the perspective of what you can do. You know, when we have the chronic issues, we are really savvy at what we can't do. But the problem over time, Doc, becomes it's a more and more narrowed, enclosed vision, and people just get like this. And it's like, no, we got to open that up, broaden the perspective, and look for what you can do, and take no crap from anyone who tells you you're not supposed to. That's their stuff, not yours.
Well, I can't thank my guest, Angela Fischetti, enough for being with us today, sharing her heart, her expertise, her vision. And I urge you to follow Angela at the Boomer Beyond Wellness. You can see that URL scrolling across our screen. And I also really want to thank the people that have joined us today, because without you, we can't do what we do. And I want to really thank you for being part of this very active and healthy community. And on behalf of the National Health Association, I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I look forward to being with you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. Angela, thank you so much, really. You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.